The who can really get in the way if it's not clear, but there are hurdles that prevent you from making what feels like the right decision. And I think it makes great sense to talk about that.
There's that friction with the identity, that a business owner has. Well, of course they need to be the next me because I'm the one that got it here this way successfully. This is how, I've done all the work. It takes someone who's really willing to separate the identity and ego of what does the business need and be comfortable with considering that it might not be someone like them.
Welcome to the Business Transition Roadmap. My name is Elizabeth Ledoux, and through my years, I have seen how communities thrive when business succession and transition are done well. Me and my team at the Transition Strategists have been helping business owners develop and implement transition strategies for over 30 years. And on this show, we want to help you by giving you the roadmap to a healthy business transition. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the Transition Strategists, our business transition roadmap podcast. Welcome back, and it's wonderful to be with Debbie Davis again. Some of you may have watched our last podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun, and we're really excited about this conversation today. My name is Marcy McNeal, and I'm a guide and strategist with the Transition Strategists. I've been doing that for almost 4 years, working with Elizabeth and our really wonderful, wonderful guide community. And yeah, I'm just excited to dig into some of our tools and our process as we discuss today. Do you want to say hello, Debbie?
I would love to say hello. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're calling in from. I'm Debbie Davis. I'm also a guide with the Transition Strategists. And just happy to be here, happy to dig into the conversations with everybody. I have been with the Transition Strategists a little over 4 years, so right around the same time you came in, Marcy, and love the work we do, love the opportunity to share nuggets with anybody that is interested and in need.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about this last night when I was kind of envisioning what we were going to talk about, Debbie, and I really enjoyed our conversation last time about focusing on the compass and the power of that particular tool. And, our last conversation was about the why. What is it what are the objectives that a business owner and a family would have for doing any kind of a transition? And I've been thinking about how closely linked that is to the who. And I thought maybe I'd see if you would be up for a conversation today about the who, which is a very specific component of our compass. And one that I find really fascinating as business owners really start to look at and develop a plan around their transition. And one that can be really exciting, one that can be fraught with all kinds of limited thinking and blind spots and that kind of thing. So I thought it might be kind of fun for us to dig into that. What do you think?
Thank you for asking. So I will talk about anything with you all day long because I love our conversation. So thank you for asking. The who as part of the compass is intriguing to me and exciting to me for a couple of reasons. I think about the compass. The compass is a tool that is one of my favorites. It asks some very critical questions. It asks about, to your point, the why and the who that we're going to discuss, but also what owners are transitioning, when they're transitioning it, how they're transitioning, and how much they'll be transitioning. And those questions, all of them are really critical as they try to define the direction that they're going to go. And that's honestly why the compass is so important to me. We initially talked to owners who want to just execute and make how do we get this done? And we first need to take them back to what direction are you going? What are the critical things that are so very important? And those questions, those 6 questions that are part of our compass, do such a good job of that. And to your point, the who can really get in the way if it's not clear. And it can really get in the way if it feels clear, but there are hurdles that prevent you from making what feels like the right decision. And I think it makes great sense to talk about that, to normalize the conversation that owners really struggle with this, even if they have a successor they've talked about for years. And so it's a really great, I think a great topic. And I think it's going to be a healthy one to dig into and ask questions around. One of the questions that I started jotting down some things the limiting beliefs you mentioned, I think is a really interesting component, because as I wrote down questions, I'm like, oh, that would be so full of nuggets in terms of trying to understand what are the limiting beliefs behind perhaps who's capable.
Mm-hmm.
I actually stumbled on that one a couple of weeks ago. So love to hear where your head's at around that.
Well, that phrase you used of who's capable is so, I mean, we could swim in that one for an entire conversation, because that I have found in the with the businesses that I have supported and worked with and guided through their transitions, that right away it's a tricky question, because it's what are you actually asking? Who's capable to do what I do as the owner, as the founder, as the business owner, entrepreneur, or who's capable to actually run the company and move it forward? Those are two different things.
Absolutely.
Two very different things. And yet it's understandable how someone would get stuck in the first one. Who can be the next me?
Yep.
But the next me, it may not be what the business needs.
And
then you there's that friction with the identity, right? That a business owner has. Well, of course they need to be the next me, because I'm the one that got it here this way successfully. This is how, I've done all the work. And of course, what they need next to go further and to thrive and grow or whatever, or even just survive, is another me. And so it takes someone who's really willing to separate the identity and ego of what does the business need, and be like, and be comfortable with considering that it might not be someone like them.
Right. And with the element of not having someone like them, it might be someone that is actually causes friction within the relationship between the owner and the potential successor. It might be somebody that they are at odds with,
right,
and they don't perhaps get along. And that belief that I can't even get along with him, why would I ever, or her, why would I ever want to have that person in this place? And it's like, wait a minute, why don't I get along with that person? Is it because they are oppositional, or is it deeper than that? What is it? What is behind that?
And the substance of the not getting along, is it about that they don't have the capacity, they lack the skills, they lack the training, the experience, whatever it is, which those are all things that you can navigate.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something about the relationship itself, you still can be navigated, but you're going to navigate it in a very different way.
Right.
You probably have to navigate both. Yeah. Absolutely.
Very deep subject. I worked with a group a couple of weeks ago, and the owner, is very strong, is a strong leader and great person, has great relationships with all of his people. But when he started thinking about some of the things that would change that are very different than him, it to your point, there is ego attached. And he felt it, and he called himself out and said, hopefully I haven't done anything horribly wrong, and the direction you go is great, but hopefully you're benefiting from the work that I've done, and you are happy with the work that I've done, and I can still contribute. And so it's, I think, as they wrestle with who, and then the change or potential change that comes with the who, to your point, it is hard for the owner to let go and detach from how meaningful that is to them and the significance of who they are, and approach it in a healthy perspective as objectively as they possibly can. What is in the best interest of the business? But then also, I think they wrestle with going forward. I don't know about you, but all of the owners that I've worked with all want to contribute going forward in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And when they let go of the idea of this is what I brought to the table, this is who I am, and somebody else has a different set of skills, different vision for the company, not that that vision is disregarding of the legacy, but it's a shift.
Mm-hmm.
Fitting into under that new leadership. oh, it is a whole new world for them. And it can be challenging.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, for someone to really step into and embrace and be comfortable in that space, they have to be clearly committed to something bigger than themselves, which hopefully is the success of the business, is the success of the transition, is the teaching and mentoring of that next person or persons, and not about, not kind of get caught up in the how I'm feeling about this in this moment kind of thing. And then the resistance can come in. So it does, I think that's a huge thing, is to being committed to something bigger than, like you said, what they brought to the table, where they got the company to in this moment in time, and knowing that there's something really, really great beyond that they can support and they can be a part of, and they're not going to be the ones necessarily driving that. Yeah.
Which is really hard. It makes me think of, I think capable and ready can be two different things.
Very. Yeah.
And it makes, as you say that, is who's capable of carrying the legacy on, and what that looks like could be a little bit different. It could be a shift in the way that the initial owner did it. But then I think also is that the other thing that the owners, I hear a lot, and I'm sure you do too, our owners are so worried about, but they're not ready. And sometimes they can't even see the potential. They might be that vision of how to get there. There aren't a lot of details, so they can't imagine it having a progression. And so if they're not ready right now, it can cause some major hurdles for them, and some limitations in terms of who they consider. I'm curious, do you have any stories that come to mind when you think about, they're capable, but they don't have the maturity, they don't have the whatever. What?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I can think of one family that their former client doing really well, but really having to go through that conversation of, and that exploration of, there's two potential, well, there's three successors, two in the business, and those two have very different sets of skills and personalities and interests. And as they are, neither are ready. Together, they're capable. Individually, neither of them is what the owner and the founder is. And the struggle, but there's this, I think there's this incredible generosity when a business transition owner is looking at it and saying, okay, I'm really open to a whole different way of this looking. Like maybe it's going to take two people to do what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been doing this for 40 years and I can do it in my sleep. And neither of them are understandably at that level, and may never be, but maybe collectively you have something really magical. And really being willing to explore what that could look like. Because I do think there's such an interesting distinction between when someone is kind of stuck on, it has to be one person. There is going to be one successor, and they better figure out how to do everything that I've learned how to do, versus they don't want to learn about this part over here, but they could still be a really, really great leader. And could we just get somebody else to do that part over there? Do they have to know how to do that? And, so that it's that challenging that thinking, that limited thinking of, well, it's got to be one person. If it's not one person, then there's something wrong here. It's like, no, people are going to come, like you said, they're going to come to the table with their own skills and interests and capabilities. And let's work with that.
Yeah.
Let's work with that. Let's not force the outcome and have someone potentially fail, or just be really unhappy. Right? I don't think any owner, especially in a family situation, would want that to be the case. And so I do think just the ready and capable are to me are such empowering. They create such an empowering conversation because it's not yes or no.
Right.
It gives you the space to say, oh yeah, you're ready there, there, and there. Oh, and you're capable there, there, and there. Let's figure out how we can get those all to come together in whatever time frame, 2, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. Create the plan and then work it so that you get them ready. So there's that one family. And then it's interesting. I'm working with a client right now with a really fantastic business, and it's a private business, not a family business. And I love that he has identified 3 potential successors, and they all have their own thing that they bring. And the richness of that in creating a partnership, which can also have a lot of other tentacles and challenges in its own, on its own, but just the openness to these 3 people, he's confident can do it. They would have to figure out who does what inside of that partnership, but just that there's a real openness to really create it. To create it in a way that makes sense for everyone and builds upon their strengths.
It's funny that you said that. I love the word open because that's where my head went when we were talking about that. Do you find that owners typically come in with an idea and it's pretty set? Or do you find that your owners come in not sure at all?
I mean, it's such a continuum. I mean, I think I've worked with people every single step of that continuum along the way. And I do feel that the ones who, at least in my experience, the ones who really have that sort of predetermined how this is going to look struggle the most.
Yeah,
they struggle the most with letting go of that, right? Because that's an unmet expectation, which is where, as human beings, the vast majority of our upset in life comes from, is when we had an expectation that didn't get met. So they've created one. They've created an expectation. They've kind of gotten attached to it, and it's hard to let go. I mean, that's normal for any human being in just about any scenario. But imagine it being, who's going to be the one to run my business after me? The stakes are high. And they feel high. So yes.
I feel like there's also, I wonder where my head was going was, I feel like a lot of them, they're problem solvers, right? Owners are problem solvers. So they're either coming to us with a solution or they're frustrated because they don't have one, is what it feels like. And that said, I think that there's a level of openness that is involved in that, both scenarios. And what I have found is even those who are set, even those who are, they think they know, that strong, confident no shifts over time.
Mm-hmm.
And they become, I mean, that's potentially why they're there. They're struggling. And they become a little more, to your point, open and curious. And maybe it's a combination of what we do, right? We're asking a lot of questions when we're sitting in there as a guide. We're helping them navigate and challenging their beliefs. So for sure there's an element of that. But I think that openness and curiosity evolves over time. Mm-hmm. And so even if they do know up here, they eventually actually get to considering other alternatives. And to your point, creating, I love that word that you used, open and creative. They get to the point where they're open and they start creating the best scenario for them. And it isn't textbook theory scenario. It isn't maybe perhaps what they had in mind initially, but they are willing to go okay, let's make this ours. Let's build this for us. And to your point, each successor then, once you create the plan, each successor might have a different plan. Someone might have a higher acumen in this area and they will travel less over there and more over in another area. And creating that safe place for the successors to be, I think is really a great opportunity for our owners to step into. And it's a dance.
Yeah.
I had an owner just this call before. He said, I have to put my ballerina shoes on and dance with my folks. And I think it's true. It's like they have to learn to step in, and as do we. And I prefer hiking shoes, not ballerina, but okay.
Anyway. You want to climb the mountain, get it to go.
Yeah, we're climbing them together. So it's fun. It's an opportunity to create some really great relationships that are lasting. And I feel like, to me, a success is when you're navigating the who, if we can create the safe place for everybody to step into that and explore and discover, create the plan and explore and discover together. It's an opportunity to do exactly a lot of times what the owner wishes for. It's letting go of certain things, handing over to people he knows and trusts and wants to carry the legacy forward. And then also building those relationships that will be there for him as they navigate out of the company.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, creating the space is one of the things as guides we get to do. It's a privilege to get to do it. And, it's almost like we could flip this conversation for a moment onto its head and say, what is the experience of determining the who from the successor perspective?
Oh, yeah.
Where does their voice come in, and how are they feeling included or not included, excluded, right, from the conversation of what they want? And again, why we do that objectives matrix where everyone gets to talk about what they want from a transition. And that, I think, really helps pave the way for the successor's voice to come into now these next conversations that a business owner and that's transitioning would be very tempted to say, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to decide. And everyone's just going to do the plan that I come up with. And yet, you and I have both heard and experienced many stories of, a business owner making assumptions about what their successor can and can't do, will and won't do, wants or doesn't want to do, and creating that conversation of let's challenge those assumptions. And the best way to do that is to bring all those voices in, because let's hear what your successor or potential successor or successors are really, how they see it. And it's interesting. It's a really dynamic conversation when you have potential successors at the table. We don't always get that. Sometimes there's a lot of work that we do with business owners around the transition and the who with just them, and we help them challenge their own assumptions. But when you have that other voice there, it really brings more richness to the exploration and to the discovery. So, I think that, and I can think of a client that I work with currently who, and so it was sort of predetermined. It's a family transition. So it was like, it's going to be this or nothing. We'll see, or we'll sell it to someone else. And, the kids will get it in our estate. They'll get the rewards and all of that. But knowing that the way the successors in this particular scenario want to move the business forward is very confronting to the founders and what they have built, and facing that what they have built is not going to survive into the future. It has to change. And that's a tough thing to wrestle with. And then how would my son or daughter know how to do that, right? They, and they've never run a business at all. How are they going to know how to move it forward and change it the way it needs to be changed? If I don't see it that it needs to change, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I love that you say, and bring the voices in, because, and it's very rich. It's also very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be very, we can go into places that can trigger people.
Yeah.
We can go into places that create opportunity that wasn't there before. I mean, I've seen owners and successors sit at the table and they uncover things that they didn't know was there, either skill sets or things that have been done that nobody knew about, or just this increase of information. So I look at owners who insist on just waiting until they have everything set before they bring their successors in versus those who bring their successors in. And I think there's an argument for both, and I don't think one is right or wrong.
Yep.
I think they both have a place and it's fine. But I think when you do have the successors in there, a couple things come to mind. It is a place where it's very dynamic. The conversations are really dynamic, and uncovering things is a normal thing, and it's okay. And giving our permission to, I love our people first value, and we have fun when we're in those meetings, and we're going to step into the uncomfortable instead of hide from it. And so we celebrate those things. And then two, I think I love going into those places without a preconceived notion of what it's going to look like, and really wanting to be open and discovering or exploring and learning. And it's a beautiful place to be.
So I was going to ask you a quick question if I could, Debbie, because I think you have had some experience in this area. Because the who sometimes also brings up issues of equality and fairness, especially in a family business where you might have some people in the business, you might have some people outside, or you have a whole bunch of them in the business, but they're working at completely different levels and different ages and the different investment of time and years that they might have put in. And I do think that there are, and I definitely have worked with several owners who that is sort of like a pothole in the dark. They don't even know that they're gonna fall into it, or they know they are, and they just don't want to. They just don't want to go forward because they don't want to address it. So, what have you seen? I'd love to hear if you've got thoughts that are even examples of how clients have navigated that.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. So, where my head went initially was, I always go back to, it's a journey. And so equity and fairness, they might have a vision for what that looks like. But at the end of the day, it is a journey. And that's the common thread that I've seen. And that is owners, the ones that I have worked with, owners have approached the equity and fairness in terms of either let's talk about gifting or percentage of shares if they're transitioning. So gifting, fairness that I've seen has been equitable shares, right? Everybody, or that gifting piece has been fair, and I've never seen anybody gift 100%. So I'll say that. Now then the partnership looks a little bit different, and what that looks like that I've seen is that happens over time. And typically what I've seen is, and we have to state it up front, is that the owner is paying attention and seeing who's stepping in and how are they stepping in to be the next majority owner. And so, and again, as long as they're transparent, it looks a little bit, it is, I think, a healthy conversation to say, we're going to be watching over a period of time to say this is what it is. The other side of that, I can think of an owner that I know of that um, is just transitioning to one person specifically and has made the decision to, here is my successor, here is the majority shareholder, and this is what it is going to look like. Any of those, though, is a heavy, heavy, heavy decision. And usually, especially in the work that we do, because we don't typically navigate a transaction, we're navigating a transition. But at the end of the day, it's a journey, and it takes place over time, and it could be a percentage of shares in the first year, a smaller percentage building up over time until at some point, the big milestone is obviously when you pass over that threshold of the original owner doesn't have the majority shares.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up a point, or you kind of brought us into another part of the compass, which just illustrates how connected all of the pieces and all of the questions are, which you can go very quickly from the who to the how. Okay, so who is it and how am I going to do it? And those are actually distinct conversations, but definitely linked. And then we have the what is there to transition, and that could be just the specific assets. It can be the responsibilities. The when are things going to be transitioned, such as, I love this. We have this tool that an owner goes through and looks at first and foremost, what's my job? What do I do? What are the tasks and the roles? And I think that piece is really, really specifically tied to the who, right? Because who's going to do what I do or I have done? And then there's another piece to that tool that then looks at the strategic, like the decision making, which is a little bit distinct from the what do I do, right? So decision making could be that's going to also go directly to your successor or your who. But what about, are there other people who are going to be involved in the decision making, and that it's going to transition to more than just the doer successor, right? So it gets really fascinating when you break down the role and the tasks and the decisions that the owner is actively doing, and how are the ones that need to continue to be done going to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't think a doing successor, it does not have to automatically also now be the 100% decision maker successor. There might be siblings, there might be other people in the company. The owner might say, I'm gonna stay in that capacity on the board and in governance, because I'm gonna hang on to a piece of the company for a while because I want to continue to contribute in that way. So anyway, I just bring that up because it's really fun to see how all these tools just, they really interact with each other pretty organically. And but there's, there really is a lot more behind the question of who than do I like this person? Are they like me? Do I see myself in them? They're a go-getter. They're going to work hard. Okay, those things are great, but we have to really look at what are all the pieces and components that need to be transitioned, and what's the plan around that?
Yeah, I love what you said, because I think about the different hats that the owner wears when they're considering the who. And I think when we highlight the different components of the business specific to the ownership versus operations versus the governance side of things, I think those are all really great categories to help the owner consider the who in a different light. And as they work through the who relative to ownership versus operations, to your point earlier, it's a great opportunity to say perhaps an owner and the person operate in the operations side of things are not the same person.
Exactly.
And when we oftentimes I think they get to the table and they don't have a clue of all the things they do. They've just been head down working, getting the business to the point where it's able to be sold. And so, or transition. And it just is they don't know what they know. They just assume certain things and they haven't given it thought to the different categories. And it's really powerful to help them unpack that and consider the who, to your point, and great decision.
It reminds me of a couple businesses specifically that I have worked with where the businesses themselves, and I think you could probably say the exact same thing. The technology or the knowledge needed to do that business is very specific, and inside the family, successors grew and developed as employees in the thing the company does, not in the how you run a company or a business, right? It's like they're really good at maybe graphic design or multimedia advertising or engineering or whatever. And they went to school because that's what our family business does. So I went to school and learned that. And that is not the same set of skills you need and it takes to actually run the business. So I could think of some. It just makes me kind of smile or giggle a little bit because I can think of some of those examples right now of people, businesses that we've worked with, and it's fine. It's completely you can totally navigate that, but there is sort of that conversation of, oh, I'm an engineer. That is not what's needed here.
Yes. And I would add, oh, I'm a daughter, or oh, I'm a son.
Yes.
And that is not what is needed here.
Exactly. Great point. Really great point.
Yes. Those, again, the hats that they're wearing, it's as we highlight that and bring that to light, I think it is it's a simple act that is incredibly powerful that I think helps create clarity to not just the owners, but also to the successors, because to your point, they come in as the expert, not as the owner.
Yeah.
Not as how do I operate a business? How do I run a business?
So let's dig into something you just brought up, because I think you have a business that's probably on the cusp, if not already kind of looking at this as an issue, which is an owner who is fearful of losing their relationship with their children through the transition, because it is going to be emotional. There is going to be some strife, and it's all part of the process, and it's all completely healthy. And sometimes it feels yucky. But say a little bit more, because I can think of a business you're working with right now that's maybe on the horizon, if not already there.
Yeah. I cannot think of any owner that I've worked with that ever said, oh, I'm fine with conflict and let's go into this. I don't care if I upset anybody. Every single owner values the people that they have, that they bring to the table, and wants to preserve the relationships. And so that becomes a dilemma. They think that if they bring this topic up and it doesn't go well, they could lose potential people. So they do nothing, which is really unfortunate. And so I really just want to take a second and celebrate the people that do step into those hard situations. To your point, it is part of the normal process. And that's honestly for families specifically who it's deep, right? It's not just an employee, and not that any of the folks that we work with consider any of their employees just employees. They all value those relationships. But when it's family, it is very rich, and it is very scary when you love your children and don't want to rock the boat or cause tension between them, whatever it is. So see a lot of that. And that is a highlight always. And I think I wish we could replay what you said, and I'll try to summarize it well, but normalizing the conversation that this is a journey, stepping into those difficult situations with the skill set that this is or the knowledge that this is normal, and with a skill set of how this is how we treat people. It's mutual respect, it's care, it's celebrating the fact that we just opened up a can of worms that has lived in this corner for the last umpteen years, and we're going to tackle this situation. And it's okay. We're going to live through this. We're going to understand it. We're not coming in to blame and shame anybody. We're not coming in to attack anybody. We're coming in to learn, to understand, perhaps say I'm sorry, and perhaps celebrate a new relationship that developed from it because we tackled that, and we're going to be okay through it. And I think normalizing that's what it takes to get through this is, gosh, it's a huge win in my world. And I've seen folks who do that. And we celebrate that. It's like, gosh, that was hard. And we all survived. We're here. And we're better because of this. We're okay.
Yeah.
And we give a big hug and a high five or whatever that looks like. Or take 5 minutes so we can dry our eyes and come back and do that.
Deep breath.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things that we are fortunate to be able to help those folks do is just like climbing that mountain. It is hard. It is so hard. We're going to get blisters. We're going to be hot. We're going to be hungry. We're going to be tired. We don't want to keep going. And they face all of that in a situation where they're navigating conflict. And we don't stop. We do keep going. And we do it with love, and we do it with care, and we do it with, it's hard and it's okay.
You said something earlier that was beautiful. I love that because it is, but is anything worth doing, right? It's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. You're going to have lots of bumps, lots of bumps and bruises. But you said something earlier about the avoidance, right? So the fear of damaging relationships, it becomes enough that someone just chooses to not deal with it, to not plan their transition and to avoid it.
Yeah.
And, I am working with a family right now where that the relationships are damaged because it was avoided. The decision didn't get made. And, you can look at what you were trying to avoid then becomes the ultimate end result you end up with.
Yes.
And
Beautifully said.
So
you need to repeat that.
I'm not even sure I could, but what you're trying to avoid is what you get.
Yes.
Trying to avoid damaging relationships out of fear. So you'd make no plans. You do not move forward. You do not actually transition. And then you end up damaging the relationships that are most important to you anyway. And so I think that if there's any, if there are any owners that are listening and really considering how do I begin going about identifying my who, my invitation to them is recognize that avoiding doing this work will likely get you the thing you don't even want.
Yeah.
And so it's so worth just surrendering and just saying, I got to do it. I've got to do it.
Yeah.
And I'll figure, I got to have the conversations. So
makes me think of the book, The Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah.
And Horwath is the last name of the author. But, stepping into that as opposed to away from the conflict or the hard stuff is so limiting. It's back to open versus limiting beliefs. And I think if you can try to be open, and it does take a mindset. It is a skill set that can be learned. And conflict doesn't have to be hard. It's just navigating it with honesty, care, respect, accountability. And it's not, I'm holding you accountable. It's, I'm accountable for my actions. I'm accountable for my feelings. I'm accountable for whatever I say I'm going to do and following through on that. And there are emotions involved in it, and that's okay. You don't have to skirt around them.
And it speaks to, successful business owners, which are all the folks that we get the opportunity to work with. don't shy away from other hard conversations.
No.
So it speaks to the power of that family, right? The family dynamics and the family care and the love and the, just the challenge of navigating that. And I also think something you said earlier, Debbie, that I work with a lot of my clients, both within business transitions and my other work, distinguishing between conflict and hard conversations, because they are not the same. They are not the same.
Tell us more.
There are many people that I have worked with who perceive a hard conversation is a conflict, and so you need to avoid it because conflict is bad. We have hard conversations easily around the things that are very important to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the ones who are scary. It's those hard conversations that are scary, where it really feels like we have a lot at stake or a lot to lose, that we avoid those. But sometimes it's because we anticipate conflict. And many times that couldn't be further from the truth, depending on how you approach the conversation, right? And how you engage in that interaction and that dialogue. And I think that's one of the things as guides that we do so well. And we support our clients so well in stepping into that conversation, that they might be really scared because they've already decided that there's too much at stake.
Yeah.
And so anyway.
Unpacking that for them and understanding that, I think, is such I love that sweet spot of helping understand what it is they're wrestling with. And this is just me being selfish for a minute. It feels good to be able to sit with them and help them unpack that, and then set the plan for what does a good, healthy conversation look like around whatever it is they were wrestling with. And what's fun about that is sometimes that challenging thing just lives in their head. Mm-hmm. And it really is something they've created. And I'm sure you get the same thing. And it's so beautiful. I've done it. I've had a coach help me navigate that and go, "You've created this, Debbie." And it's like, gosh, you're right, I have. And it's really not that big of a deal. And there are times where we sit in that place too. Or there are other times where we go, yeah, we do need to have a conversation with that person, and let's work through that together. And 9 times out of 10, once you step there and you start having those conversations, to me, that's a caring place to be. It says I care about you. If I'm to have the conversation with you that is about something that we're struggling with, it says I care, as opposed to I'm upset.
Yeah. And how often we are, just humans, business owners being humans, we get stuck in the space of, we've decided that it's a big deal or it's scary or whatever for the other person that we need to have the conversation with. Come to find out, they haven't been thinking about it at all. We have built it up in our minds to be so significant. And then you have the conversation, the other person is like, yeah, it's not a big deal. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. And I mean, I can think of many times that I have done that, in particular with my family. so
Family, the best.
Yes, they are. They are. So, yeah. But again, I think, looking at hard conversations, and I think distinguishing hard conversations between actual conflict is helpful for many people, because conflict is, I mean, and you think about all the different types of conflict people, right? And how they address and react to conflict. And, you get a family that has a bunch of avoiders, then, it's going to be something it's going to be a little bit of a hurdle, but go ahead.
I think about conflict. One of the things that I love to highlight relative to conflict is that we can have a conflict conversation that is either healthy or unhealthy. Mm-hmm. To your point, those healthy behaviors versus unhealthy behaviors. And those unhealthy behaviors, can create a really ugly, let's duke it out battling thing. You can go in victim, you can go in rescuer, you can go in persecutor. Victim sounds like, oh, this is happening to me. Rescuer says, if you just listen to me, everything will be great. And persecutor says, y'all are wrong and I'm right and you should this. And if we can recognize that in ourselves, those behaviors in ourselves, those are common tendencies that everybody has. And not work done by me, work done by Steve Cartman, who is a psychologist a long time ago, did that. So if we can recognize those unhealthy behaviors in ourselves and start working on replacing them with healthy behaviors, which is being open, which we've talked a lot about. Open says, I'm willing to listen. I care about you. I care about this. I'm okay with having this hard conversation. And we're more resourceful and more willing to hold ourselves to a level of agreed upon accountability. That looks wildly different than the drama that is created by victim, rescuer, and persecutor. Mm-hmm. And once we start seeing that difference and we have the ability to engage with a healthy relationship, help through conflict, it is so much more productive, and it reduces our avoidance tendency significantly. It's still hard. Mm-hmm. It's still difficult. And I've been teaching that for a really long time. And it's incredibly hard to do that for me even. Mm-hmm. But when you do, it helps you step into that place in a much better light and have different results that are mutually positive. Mm-hmm. And not that we still sometimes have conflict. And by mutually positive, I mean, we have an agreed upon decision that both of us have consented to, as opposed to I'm giving up everything and walking away frustrated. Mm-hmm. And that just is better and much better for everybody. Usually.
I think we could bring this kind of full circle back to where we started about the who. And I'm thinking about what you were just saying about conflict and hard conversations. And again, the successor, looking at what is, when you think about a successor and how there could be a lot of fear in speaking up, in saying, I'm ready, I want, teach me, help me. One of my daughter's favorite things to say right now is, hear me out. Hear me out. I'm like, oh boy, what's coming now? But, actually feeling that, that safety to engage in a conversation with the business owner, whether it's mom, dad, whomever, and or it's an employee to the current business owner, and being able to find that courage to step into that conversation and be known as, I'm here and I'm ready, or I'm here and I'm willing. I know I'm not ready. Help me get ready. All of those, all of the ways to approach the business owner who probably might at times just feel very alone in having to try to figure it out.
Yeah. And scared also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Scared also, because I think about the successor coming to an owner and saying any of the scenarios that you suggested, if they're afraid, their response isn't going to be the best response to the successor. And the successor has to be willing, to your point, or has to be ready for that and be able to go, this is hard for you too. And I know that. And so let's think about this. Let's have a discussion about this, not a make a decision today conversation. Mm-hmm. Let's talk through what that would look like and understand it, because, man, these owners step into that place, and it's probably one of the hardest things they've done. Building the business is hard. Transitioning the business, from what I have seen, is incredibly challenging and emotional for these folks. Mm-hmm. And that can get in the way of the right who potentially even being missed if there are things that are off. So I think it's good to be able to explore this topic of who.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, I think we could talk about this all week because
I know we go.
it is very dynamic. Anytime you have relationships, there's just so much dynamic involved in that. And I think I would say the nuggets that I would hope people took away from this, and I think we both need to come up with some ideas about what that would look like. But one, it's a journey. And that's what I always try to talk about. One, it's a journey to work through the process of identifying your who, and it's relational. So a relational journey is different than here's the process of how to do something. Here are the skill sets. You go learn them and you do it and you execute. And so the relationship ebbs and flows. And so, aligning on, to your point earlier, more than just what are you capable of? What are you ready for now? It's, how do you align in terms of values? How do you align in terms of timeline? How do you align in terms of your capacity to be able to execute on, if it's a purchase, right? If it's a shares purchase, it's really dynamic. And those are just a few off the top of my head I can think of. What else would you add?
Well, I think, your point of the alignment is definitely key. But I think also being the openness, right? The openness to explore a lot of different scenarios.
Yeah.
I think coming back to one of the key things that it would be if every business owner, especially within a family, who wants a business to stay in the family, would at least consider at one point in time that my successor, my family member, whomever it is, does not have to be me, does not have to be like me, does not have to be a mini me, a reflection, they could, you said it earlier, they could be the owner and they could be technically an expert in this particular area and they don't have to run the business.
Right.
Like that is a scenario that is perfectly appropriate and acceptable and could really mean everyone is happy at the end of the day. Everyone is pleased. Everyone is in the seat that they are best suited to be in. And it just creates great opportunity. So I think I would love it if at least every family business owner would be willing and explore that and at some level. Maybe it doesn't turn out to go that way, but just be willing to say that, yeah, that's a possibility. Mm-hmm. We could play with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like as we go forward, as I go forward, I think about all of the benefits of that openness. And I've worked with some folks who are so open and others who are not. And they get there eventually. They have to explore options as they all do. It's at the end of the day, it's just a fun journey to work with them. And I always feel just so honored to be able to be part of that with them. Feels good. Mm-hmm. And it always looks different.
It does. It always does, which does make what we do incredibly fun.
Yeah.
And we learn out of every engagement, every business that we work with, we learn so much about our process and how it really supports families and businesses. So I'm thinking in terms of wrapping up and what there is that, should someone who's listening to this podcast be thinking, okay, clearly I need to be thoughtful and about my who. I think what could they do? What's the next thing that they could do?
That's a great question. So there are a couple things that I see. The folks that are curious and want to learn more about the process, there are opportunities on the website. So correct me if I'm wrong, www.transitionstrategist.com.
Yep.
And there are tons of resources out there for them to engage. There are items that they can download. There are groups that they can be part of. they can sign up to get an email and somebody can reach out to them. So there are a ton of opportunities. The website specifically has that for you. I imagine we'll have a link for folks in the podcast. What did I miss, Marcy?
No, I think that's great. I was actually just looking to see what tools we have available. And there's certainly several that are sort of broader, like checklist, the family business transition checklist, exploring business transition paths. So there's a variety of tools right here. But if someone wanted to know, specifically more about how do I navigate the conversation of who, I think and I recommend they hop into one of the webinars that Andrea and other guides are hosting to explore that area and that conversation, or just request a conversation with a guide.
Yeah.
I've
had that before where someone reached out and said, I just want to have a conversation with you about this. And I've actually facilitated a training, and it's like, let's just talk about this specific component relative to me. And those one-on-one conversations are complimentary, and we don't charge for that. And that helps create awareness on both sides. Sometimes what I found is we're a good fit for that person, but that person isn't ready, and they come back around whenever they are.
Yeah.
They're ready now if they're a good fit, or alternatively, they're not a good fit, but we can give them some insight into the how they can take a next step forward so they build their business perhaps, or resolve whatever issue they're working on. So I think to your point, reaching out to one of the guys, I think is a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'd love to talk to you all.
We do love to talk to business owners. We love to talk to families. We love to, we just love to bring that curiosity and exploration, because it's really fun. I think it's incredibly dynamic and fulfilling. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Transition Roadmap. If you're ready to start shaping your own transition strategy, which I'm really hoping that you are, our team at the Transition Strategists would love to offer you a free discovery strategy session where you can explore what might be good for you and just some new ideas. We've got a new perspective and a new approach with people first. And a lot of what we talk about, nobody has ever really done before. So I want to encourage you to think about that and to go to transitionstrategist.com/discovery to schedule your call if you are even curious. It's free, no pressure. We'd love to talk to you. And by the way, if you're a successor or if you've got one in your business, you'll also want to check out for sure Your Next Gen Friend, A Successor's Guide to Business Transition. It's a podcast that's hosted by my successor, Andrea Carpenter. She's incredible. And this one is specifically designed for rising leaders in family businesses. So thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on the Business Transition Roadmap.